So we've been talking about digital arrests here at TMB, which is the latest menace in the cybercrime world that's hitting scores of Indians with increasing regularity. In the first of this two-part deep dive, we had a victim of the scam describe how all of this happens.
The amount which I lost was 25,000. He asked me about my details. Now you are the prime suspect.
So essentially how it works is that you get a call from someone pretending to be a cop or some high-level official from the Enforcement Directorate, Customs, the Income Tax Department, or even the Narcotics Control Bureau, claiming that some parcel of yours was found to have drugs in it, or that your Aadhaar was misused for some illegal activity, or even that a loved one has been caught doing something against the law and has been arrested. In the first part of this series, I also spoke to a former cop and cybersecurity expert who explained why it's so difficult to catch these criminals. He also said that most of these criminals are part of gangs that are operating from foreign locations. These could be countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. In fact, as per the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, or the I4C, 46% of reported cyber frauds in early 2024, amounting to 1,776 crore rupees, were linked to scams originating from Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. Now that opens up a lot of questions. Why do they choose these specific locations? How organized are these crime syndicates? How do they recruit people? What is the Indian government doing? Can intermediaries do more? What is the legal recourse available to victims, and what is the conviction rate in such cases? We dig into all of this and a lot more in today's episode. It's Friday, November 8th. I'm your host, Diya Rekhi, and you are listening to Devious Genius, the digital arrest scam, only on the morning brief from the Economic Times. Here's Kanish Gaur of cybersecurity firm Athenian Tech explaining to me how these gangs operate from outside of India.
So India has signed multiple agreements worldwide, and as part of that, we're trying to see that we have visa-free access for Indians in multiple countries, which include countries in Southeast Asia. Now, some of these countries have extended further access of giving 60-day plus visa-free access to Indians, countries like Thailand. Now, that is currently being used by perpetrators to send people to other parts of Southeast Asia. So today, countries like Vietnam and Thailand allow Indians to step in, and then these cyber criminals are using these routes to send people to countries like Cambodia and Myanmar and Laos, where there are weak laws with respect to safeguarding people. So that's one of the big issues that we're finding. And as per the report of Ministry of Home Affairs, more than 50,000 Indians have gone missing since last year in Southeast Asia.
But what's interesting is that they're able to execute what is a very Indian cultural phenomenon in the sense of fear of authority being something which is distinctly Indian, right? And they're managing to engineer these scams to target an Indian audience. So I wanted to understand how they manage that on one aspect. And secondly, what their network is really like in India.
See, in India, there's a big fear of law enforcement agencies, and there are multiple law enforcement agencies. And hence, fear psychosis is being engineered for social engineering based cyber frauds such as digital arrest. Hence, names of Enforcement Directorate, CBI, and Narcotics Control Bureau is being used extensively. And a lot of these people are then sent links which are basically fake arrest warrants or fake documents which be appearing to be coming from a court of law. Answering your second question, how this is being perpetrated. Now, these criminal gangs operate at various levels. So they have people who are recruiters who lure people into traveling to these countries from India in the name of IT jobs. So a lot of times people end up paying 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh rupees looking for jobs. And then these people are sold to these cyber criminal gangs. So I'm aware of people who've actually fallen into the trap of cyber criminal activity in the name of taking up a ITES job in Southeast Asia. And a lot of these people who were earlier involved in committing these cyber criminal activities then become part of these groups who end up becoming recruiters and who recruit from various social media platforms such as Facebook. So if you go on Facebook and search for jobs in Cambodia, you will find a lot of desktop based jobs which are available. And you can click on those links, and these cyber criminals will tell you that these are fraud jobs for selling cryptocurrencies in the UK, the US, or in India, or non fungible token frauds, or romantic frauds, or digital arrest. And passports of these people will be confiscated, and they would be looking to allow them to commit this work for 12 to 14 hours. And a lot of people are okay doing it.
Sure, but can you take us through how they manage to recruit these people and carry off these massive operations?
So there are three levels through which people are moved from India. Now, these people who move are from India, are from Bangladesh, are from Pakistan, are from Sri Lanka. And then these people are given IP-based numbers. So you have various telephony-based platforms such as call Hippo, which allow you to take a WhatsApp-based number and then call someone remotely. Now, these numbers appear to be coming from India, but they are IP-based numbers through which calls are initially made. And then the victims are forced to move to Skype because Skype will offer them anonymity. So that's the modus of operandi through which this is happening. It is pretty organized because the bank accounts of a lot of these cyber criminals are not set up in Cambodia, but are set up in India. So when I was investigating a lot of these frauds, I found out multiple bank accounts that were set up in northeast of India with different companies' name. Hence, the money is then moved from one account to another account, and then it is translated to a cryptocurrency and moved to a different part of the world.
Is that what compounds the problem further? Because crypto is very hard to trace, and that's probably why criminals also really rely on cryptocurrency as a means to secure their loot in a sense.
Yes. So cryptocurrency offers anonymity in terms of where the payment has come from and where it lands up. So you can convert Indian currency into another currency or into a cryptocurrency and then move it across the country. So there is no way to track or trace who's holding this account. Currencies like Monero offer complete anonymity where you can't even trace what is the size of the wallet, what is the amount which is held up in the wallet, and where this account is set up.
And since there's so much talk of this being a cross border problem, right? You have people who are committing these crimes from outside of India's borders. I wanted to understand from you, Kanishk, about the work that the government is doing and what you think what more needs to be done, basically.
So, what the Ministry of External Affairs has done is they have issued advisories to people traveling to countries like Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, saying that if you are traveling to these countries, there is a big risk that you could be held as a slave and forced to commit cybercrime, or you could be held against your will and be forced to become part of an organized group which is duping people. So exercise caution when you're traveling to these countries. Look at the kind of visa permissions which have been given to you. If you're traveling to Thailand or Vietnam and it's been promised a job on a tourist visa, please be careful who's your employer is going to be. There are also helpline which Ministry of External Affairs has set up. Apart from that, Ministry of Home Affairs, I4C division, and the National Investigative Agency has set up investigation on tracking these cyber criminals. So the people who are involved in luring them to commit cybercrime or social media influencers who have been promoting some of these frauds could be held responsible and can be put behind bars.
And what about between governments, right? Are we seeing a lot of dialogue happening with the governments of these countries?
See, there is dialogue which is there between the government. But if people are going willingly to these countries to commit cybercrime, it is very difficult for government of two countries to stop it. So there's also an element where people have understood this is a cybercrime they are committing and they would be becoming a part of an organized cyber criminal gang, but they are still going and operating. So it is not just that people are held as cyber slaves. So there is an element where there are certain groups which claim that they are giving people better work-life balance compared to some of the other cyber gangs which are operating. So they say that we will offer you Indian food, We will also allow you to step out of the compound. We will take your passport, but we promise to return it to you. So there is also a group of people who are going and joining these gangs because they get paid up to $1,500 to $2,000 per month, which is good money for them. They have incentives. People have been given targets that per day they need to scam people up to 30 lakh rupees. If they do it at a larger level, they will get award, they will get recognition. So it's run like a proper corporate setup.
And I'm guessing it's kind of like a one-way street, right? Because it's very hard to get out of such a setup.
Yes. See, one of the key things is that a lot of people who go out initially for becoming a part of this cyber fraud gangs go because of better pay, but in the longer run, they end up losing their freedom and don't want to be part of certain criminal groups because ultimately, once they stop performing or lose interest, they have nowhere to go back because their passports are confiscated or they are then tortured or beaten or being set into isolation. So ultimately, people end up losing their will and their freedom. Hence, it's important that youngsters today who are looking to make easy money or are looking to pick up jobs outside of India, be careful of what they are signing up for.
Now, there's one critical piece of this larger puzzle that we want to address: the legal recourse available and how equipped the judiciary is to deal with the deluge of digital scams and cybercrimes. For that, I spoke to Khushbu Jain of Arc Legal, who deals with such cases on a daily basis. Thank you so much, Khushbu, for joining us on the Morning Brief. It's a pleasure to have you. We're starting off with understanding a little bit more about digital arrests. And if you can take our listeners through whether you have seen a huge spike in digital arrest related cases that you are dealing with and what that spike is really like.
Absolutely, exponentially. That is the one reason that made me write article, that made me speak on it, whether you're educated, non-educated, whether you're in service, not in service. People in security, I'm saying, are also being duped by digital arrest, where I've got a call that, this has happened, Khushbu. And I'm like, you are in cyber security. How can you get duped by this? So practically, they play with your psychology over here. Once they have the data, once they strike that trust and fear in you, then they play with your psychology and then your prudent mind stops working. So if you see hike in the matters, it's going crazy. I mean, if I have to put a number, I'm one of the lawyer in the country. There are so many dealing with the same matters. But I personally get 3 or 4 calls in a day for different kind of digital arrest happened with different age group and different kind of people happening. So imagine the number that would have gone so high, and imagine there would be people who would not even make a call, who would not even file a complaint, because people are again grappling with it. They are stuck. They did not understand and things have happened. So they're still thinking, okay, let me come over the trauma.
And there's also an element of shame, right? How do I tell someone that I'm so educated, I'm from cybersecurity, for example, and then this has happened to me? I think there's also that shame aspect, which is a huge aspect as well. But there are intermediaries like banks, platforms, and so on, which in many ways need to step up more. That was the common thread that I got from everyone I spoke to. So are platforms doing enough? Every time there is that announcement for an AI enabled tool that is fraud prevention and that kind of thing, but why aren't platforms doing more? What would you say to that?
Any business entity for that matter looks out for their profit, looks out for their business. So practically these platforms were also doing the same. They were looking out for how to grow, how to build their business, how to become more prominent. And for that matter, if a criminal is utilizing or if you and me are utilizing, it's a similar thing for them. So they always looked into their personal interest, and right so. But because of that, these platforms became a breeding ground for criminals, because cyber criminals practically started realizing that the kind of shield which is provided by these platforms is helpful for us. I can commit a crime and these platforms will not share the identity. Because they will not share the identity, they will act as a shield and I will go scot-free. So instead of that fear factor that comes in, that goes away because they feel I am protected by these platforms. That's where I think the Indian government also started working towards it. And we came up with the 2021 rules in India, where we said that these platforms have to share the identity of the person who has committed the crime if we ask by following due process. And in the scenario where they fail to provide that, they would be treated as any other person. We will take away the safe harbor protection from them. But it doesn't just stay there. It continues more from there because these criminals understand how to evade. So I think that's where I think platforms have to take one more step ahead. And just by not thinking their personal or business motive, they should understand that security of each of their users, or for that matter, each and every citizen of the countries, along with law enforcement agencies, and together help out so that these criminals do not take benefit of this, and only people who are getting benefited are these criminals. So that's where I think everybody has to come together.
The other point that I'd like you to touch upon, being in the legal profession, one, courts are already highly overburdened, right? And now you have the volume to which this kind of thing is happening. You're saying you are receiving 2 to 3 calls per day, right? Recently. I want you to kind of look into two aspects of it. How burdened are our courts going to be with cybercrimes? And the second, what is the conviction rate really like for cybercrimes in India?
Okay, we have touched a very crucial point. Number one, the courts are burdened. We need to increase the capacity of our courts. We need to increase the capacity of the judges, because population has increased, the kind of crimes that have increased, but we have not increased the capacity of the courts in the same manner or in the same proportion as it should have been. That's number one, and there is no doubt about that. We need a dedicated wing which can deal with cybercrime specifically. I'm waiting for Digital India Act to come in, and whether we are coming up with some tribunal which can deal with all kind of cyber matters, so that this can be taken. Because again, as I said, this is time sensitive. This aspect brings in jurisdiction is a very important role that plays over here, because it's borderless. So jurisdiction is actually difficult over here. Number three, it can be even with respect to different countries being involved in the crime. The second, which you're talking about, conviction rate. There are convictions that happen, but one has to understand the challenges that comes with these kind of matters. Because whenever you talk about this, one is admissibility of electronic evidence. Second is getting these evidences. We didn't get the evidence in such a manner as it should have been, or forensics has been, there's been a delay in that. But this entire system is something which has to be relooked again, reinvented. And I think I foresee the agency under the Ministry of Home Affairs has come up with cyber commandos, and also come up with training to be given at each state, when it comes to cyber aspect and forensics. So I think we are growing in that area, and we still have to wait and watch. This entire thing has to come together and has to have system in place to deal with such high number that have been coming.
So yes, there are a lot of gaps as of now in terms of how to deal with cyber crimes such as digital arrests. There's lack of awareness, unfounded fears, scant administrative and legal resources, inadequate cross-border laws, and laggard technological wherewithal. And there's more. Intermediaries need to step up. There are no two ways about it. Platforms that are used widely by these scammers must find a way to suspend their accounts. Telecom providers need to have stricter KYC protocols in place for SIM card issuance. Possibly even look at biometric authentication like one of our guests suggested. And the government on its part should look to engage with countries that are harboring these criminals. The sophistication of these crimes is only increasing by the day, and these cybercrime syndicates seem to be operating very much like a corporation, with targets and incentives for the best performing scammers. It's frightening and fascinating. But above all else, know that our systems are not equipped to deal with the deluge of scams that we're seeing today. So it's best to remain alert. I said it in the previous episode, and I'll say it again. Please don't panic when you receive any such call, and know that there is no such thing as a digital arrest. If you are a victim or know someone who is a victim of a digital arrest scam, make sure to dial 1930 and report it at the earliest. Thank you, Kanishk and Khushbu. It's Friday, November 8th. I'm your host, Diya Rekhi, and you were listening to Devious Genius, the digital arrest scam, only on the morning brief from the Economic Times. This episode was produced by Surohini Jain and Vinay Joshi, sound designed by Rajas Nayak. Executive producers Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Barman. Also, keep listening to 7 at 7, our daily news capsule, and ET Wealth and Beyond, which is our new series with the Bombay Stock Exchange on all things investment. Have a great weekend ahead.